ladies and gentlemen, this is the Tactical Approach, and we are rapidly approaching your location. My name is Greg, and joining me is Wes.
Hello, hello.
And Kurt.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are going to talk about the Season 6 changes to Song of Ice and Fire, and also do a post-mortem on the Invitational, which Wes and Kurt both attended.
That's right. We both went over to England to play some Song of Ice and Fire games.
Yeah, I hear it was a little bit of a roughing up. I did not go, so I can chalk it up to all kinds of external factors. You know, you guys have to be humble, that's the rule, but I can just say, you know what, the European air just ruined everything.
Well, last episode, we had discussed our travel plans, and someone, I think it might have been you, Greg, pointed out that maybe arriving with jet lag might...
I talked about lost luggage.
That might impact people.
I talked about jet lag and lost luggage, yes. And we had problems with both.
Yeah, I think maybe that jet lag kicked in. Definitely forgot to play a card or two.
Yeah, I can believe it. So you landed and had to go play like within 24 hours of landing.
It was about like 6 hours later.
Yeah, I don't know how he made it through the day. He didn't like sleep at all. Kurt was pretty much zombie mode all freaking weekend.
Yeah, we had the team event was the first day, and I lost every single one of those games. I let the whole country down. I'm proud of how the rest of Team USA did. They managed to get 6th place despite my not helping.
I wouldn't be too hard on yourself. We all know at home that you're a really good player. The both you guys, honestly. So I'm willing to blame. England's got there's something funny in the water. Not enough microplastics. Too much microplastics. I'm not sure. Either way, though, look, it's all external factors. It was fine. Let them come over to the U.S. We'll beat them here.
There we go. Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any notes on any specific players and how they did? Any thoughts on stuff that you saw that you thought was especially clever, or things that you're going to take home and maybe apply to games here?
I mean, I got some notes. There was one game that was completely pointless for learning because I just got steamrolled. It's an entirely different play style, though, and I think my biggest number one takeaway is less aggression. It seems like most of the games I lost, I just got a little too aggressive on one thing, and then it just went downhill from there. You know, if you don't put yourself in a position to rely on drawing the right card or rolling a roll you need, you don't have to worry about it not working, right?
Yeah, there's less luck to be concerned about. I have heard online that the Europeans tend to be a lot more defensive, specifically because of that principle, where if you are castled up in a good formation and you're not taking risks, then you don't really suffer as much from the risks.
Yeah, they were a lot harder to bait.
Yeah. I've also heard that Americans in general, that we play more aggressively across the board. And I'm kind of wondering why it is.
I think
that is the case.
Yeah, I think I can confirm that from my experience. They retreat a lot more, and they're definitely more, I don't want to say they're picky, but they choose their fights much more cautiously. And if there's a fight that's not good for them, they don't just sit there and grind it out. They disengage. And so oftentimes I'd find myself with a unit that I had to activate to charge in, and swords were open, bags were open. They just take the horse, and then they're unengaged, unactivated, and they have all their options available. And I'm sitting there activated with nothing to do. I think like something that like really stuck out to me was how Final Strike is like one of my best cards, but so many times in Europe, it felt like a completely dead card. It went from being like my best card to my worst card. It was a major adjustment. And I think I tried to adjust and say, okay, I'm going to play the mission more. And so I'd have Stannis sitting on a point instead of getting involved in combat. And so they'd go, okay, and they'd go around Stannis, and then they'd kill the weaker parts of my list. Stannis is just sitting there on a point, you know, not doing enough. And that was just some of the limitations of my faction started to really show through in a way that the Europeans knew how to exploit them, in a way that I hadn't really had people in the U.S. play that way against me before.
I didn't notice a lot of retreating, but for some reason, people don't want to soak another charge from Screamers. I don't know why.
Well, I guess the Targaryens are one of the few people, you can really grind them down. I mean, you can't outmaneuver them. Like, you can retreat, but they'll just come after you. But they don't have a lot of armor, so if you're gonna grind out a fight, it'd be better probably to grind it out with the Targs than it is with anybody else.
For sure.
Probably,
They're a lot weaker engaged.
Yeah. But, well, there we go. I guess, how does it feel to live up to the stereotype of the American cowboy? Rooty tooty shooty, and then
yeah. I mean, there was
your booty.
it was, you know, despite having a rough go of things. I think I went 2-7-1 in all. There were definitely some great players, and it was truly a privilege to get to play against some players of such talent. Wes, I know you got to play against Sophie.
That wasn't a game.
And Sophie's just a great player.
Yeah, I was just annihilated. There was nothing to be learned. I made one mistake early, and you go against a great player and you suffer greatly for it, and the game was pretty much over in round like 1 or 2.
It's more of an execution than a game.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic swing of the axe, sir.
I don't even think it lasted an hour. Like, it was fast.
They did a lot of prizes for like a lot of categories. So they had like best in faction, best painted unit, best painted army, best painted like solo monster, and they had like best sportsman, the best sportsman, and then like 5 additional best sporting people. And Wes and I, we got to play against a couple of those guys, and they were really great sports. 2 of my British opponents, Psyker and what was the Free Folk player's name, Wes?
Bannock Burn.
Yeah, they were just truly great guys to play with. I enjoyed playing with them.
Well, back home, are we going to be looking at you guys using any of the stuff that you learned here back at home? Are we going to get thrashed by patience and...
I said over in England, I think I'm hanging up Baratheons.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll come with a whole new bend.
Yeah, well, we're going into the new season, and I've been excited as a Lannister player, and of course, you guys are also excited as coming Lannister players as a result. So we'll get into that in a second, though. I guess, do you guys have any final thoughts just on the Europe as a vacation? Like, you guys go out and see anything cool, fun that you would recommend?
Oh yeah, we got to see the Tower of London was amazing. We got to see the British Museum. I really enjoyed that. And we saw the Roman baths. I think my favorite place through the whole trip was going to see York. And we were really fortunate in that York was sort of on the way back home for Mickey Mazarath. So he took like an afternoon, traveled with us, showed us all around the city. And that was really generous of him to take the time to be our tour guide. And York itself was just, it was beautiful. It was my favorite part by far.
That's where I got to see my stone bow ties. Everybody laughed at me. It's fine.
Yes, Wes had a bit of a nerd moment over construction materials.
It was a repair in a stone step done with stone bow ties.
I don't even really know what that means, but I understand it. My wife is the same way about these kinds of things. She has a little road in Amsterdam that she sometimes visits on Google Earth, and she wants to go to Amsterdam one day just so she can see. It's a really pretty walkway for pedestrians, and she's just like, one day I want to walk on that walkway.
I mean,
I'm not sure exactly what the deal is. There's something engineering about it that she's really impressed by.
I mean, it's a lot of the stuff over there. I mean, the simple fact, at least for me, we're American, so an old building to us is like a few hundred years old, right?
At most. I mean,
but like the city walls of York were over 1,000 years old, Kurt,
and still intact. People were taking their morning walks, and
you just get to walk on them.
People were jogging along the top. Yeah,
I mean, you can see like the wear on the steps of the stones where they're not flat anymore, and it's just from 1,000 years of people walking the steps. And there's just something to be said about seeing something that's been standing for so long.
Yeah. But anyway, though, so moving back into our fictional world of fantasy and ancient times. Season 6 is out, and it is so huge. We're not going to be able to cover all the changes or anything like that. Instead, we're just going to talk a little bit about the factions that we play, or that we used to play. We're no longer. Apparently, we're all doing Lannisters now. It is a great time to be playing Lannisters. It's almost all good news. The Lannisters, I feel like they were always designed as though they wanted to use their attachments. I remember even having a conversation with Kurt once about how virtually everything the Lannisters is like hits on a 4+ save, 6+ morale. Like, there's so much mediocrity, but then you've got this one really good attachment who would kind of rescue it, and you just can't ever afford to put it in the unit. And now suddenly that attachment is free, kind of, and you're doing all kinds of crazy things that really no other faction is quite on this level. There are some neat combos, but the Lannisters got a huge share of interesting new builds. I mean, we're talking about, like, there's utility, there's aggression, there's all kinds of different angles that we can go at it. I personally have been playing a lot of different games with a lot of different approaches to just how I want to build. I've been testing out the Red Cloaks, for example. They've always been a favorite unit of mine, not because they're good, but because they're so so bad. uh, when I think about the Red Cloaks and I explain them to people, a lot of times I think of there was a Weird Al song called "Boy That Boy Could Dance," and what it is he's just talking. He's describing this guy, and it's like all these terrible qualities. Like he drools, and he's got acne, and he couldn't talk to women. He never learned how to drive, but boy, that boy could dance, and that's the Red Cloaks in a nutshell. It's like, yeah, they can't fight, and they're not really all that brave. And like, you got to take crown before they can do anything.
Ever since they lost their 3-up to hit, it feels like I always thought was a mistake, but yeah, it always kind of put them in that tough spot.
Yeah, they just don't excel at anything, and they lose almost every fight. But it's the only unit where your opponent has a threat of like losing guys just because you shuffled around a little bit. And it is like, it's so funny because I've never had so much comedy from any other unit. Like I play them just because how funny they are. Like I was once playing a game and my friend was running Varamir and my Red Cloaks got attacked by a Shadow Cat. And they were losing. It was a tragedy. Like they were being torn apart by the Shadow Cat because the Shadow Cat has disrupt. So it's like -1 to hit.
Oh,
I'm hitting him.
Hitting on 5s.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to kill the Shadow Cat. Like I could retreat, but the Shadow Cat will just chase me down because it gets a free maneuver. So I'm just sitting here trying to fight it off. But there was a unit of raiders within 12 inches of the Red Cloaks being murdered by the Shadow Cat, and every time I attacked and missed the Shadow Cat, the raiders panicked. And they're disorganized, so they're like running away in droves. And my friend and I, we were just like falling over each other laughing, and we were like, what is going on? Like, what is going through the minds of the raiders as they see they're like watching my Red Cloaks be shredded.
Doing a tap dance is just too much.
Yeah. They're like, oh no. And for that one, my friend is like, maybe no one told them that the Shadow Cat is on their team. And they're just like, what? They're like, oh my god, that cat is killing for pleasure. It's not even eating them. It's gonna come over here next. We gotta go.
Yes.
So the Red Cloaks, like, I mean, that's just the unit. They're so dumb and so bad, but their mechanics are just leads to so much comedy. But they could be beaten by just about any other unit. I'm pretty sure that the new Brotherhood Without Banner peasants could probably beat the Red Cloaks in a fight. I'm not 100% positive one-on-one.
They do have disrupt.
They do, yeah.
Bad example. Brotherhood peasants are still OP.
They're kind of OP for their cost, but I mean, yeah.
But, I mean, if a Shadow Cat can take him out, peasants definitely can take him out.
It's not outside the question. So, I mean, yeah. Like, I don't know. They couldn't fight a Shadow Cat, and they were always afraid of bears, and Stannis could stop them with merely the strength of his stare. But boy, those boys could dance! And you know what? They still suck. Even with the attachment changes. Man, I tried them out and everything like that, and it's like, Mandon makes them more practical for attacking, or Gregor, the Robert Strong is still good. But one of the things that I've realized is that everybody else is getting free attachments, and I've been seeing a ton of morale boosting attachments pretty much across the board. So Red Cloaks got more viable, and the panic effects became less viable. Mm-hmm. There are still exceptions, but now you cannot predict when you're going to see them.
Yeah.
Like, it used to be, you couldn't play Red Cloaks when you were seeing Stannis, or you couldn't really play Red Cloaks against the Dothraki, or even the Night's Watch that much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's just like there's Iron Resolve all over the place. You just don't know when it's going to appear. They are better. The fact that they could fight with an attachment is good for them, but they're still really,
they're still a great looking unit.
Oh yeah, the models look great.
Love their helmets and their crests and their capes.
Isn't that the worst? Good models that suck on the table.
Yeah, you can put Adam in them now though. They get Sentinel. So you can try that scare a little bit if there is something on the table. If you're fortunate enough that something on the table can be scared still, then Adam can take a free maneuver after somebody attacks somebody else. So
Adam and Preston Greenfield are the way to get extra actions with them, yeah.
And that said, too, I see that they set up Cersei so that you can take the Kingsguard version of Jaime, a little bit cheaper, if she's in your army. But Cersei still has the same problem as before, where the cards that she's drawing, it's like Subjugation of Power and Hear Me Roar, and those were both kind of... It's really situational. Lannisters are super weird when you talk about what's good and what's bad in their army.
They have the potential to fail, yeah.
Yeah, and when they hit, they're good, but when they miss, that's a 0. It's a big goose egg. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hear Me Roar and Subjugation, they're not reliable cards.
And to be honest, on top of that, I don't even think that's the best Jaime. I think the other Jaime's better anyway. And you don't need a discount.
I agree.
I'll take Stalwart and Martial training over.
I mean, that Jaime at one point, but how about if it's in, like, Honor Guard? Honor Guard, I'll take Expert Duelist.
No, because Martial training...
A vulnerable token, which will unlock an additional ability for Honor Guard.
Yeah. The Honor Guard become more powerful from the young line.
True.
Yeah. So the 1-point Jaime attachment is stronger than the 2-point Jaime attachment.
And don't even get us started on Jaime Commander. Still didn't see a change.
He's still not great. I mean, now that Adam is reasonable, I think you can maybe run a list where you have both Adam and Jaime, and you get a little bit more utility.
Yeah.
I did play with Jaime some, but all of his fallbacks are still all of his drawbacks are still kind of there.
Right.
I don't know. Your other commanders are still sort of superior. And at least it's better. At least Adam's there now. So yeah, but speaking of the Kingsguard Jaime, the Kingsguard in general, I really don't see them as being all that viable either. We do have a couple of options. So Barristan is amazing now, depending on what you put him in. I see people online are doing like the Selmy Sons, because that's one of those things you double down. You're like, oh yeah, Warrior Sons, they're very tanky. And of course, experienced players, you just go around the unit. I don't have to fight the Warrior Sons. Like, why would I bother if that's where your most expensive attachment is, and this unit is 7 points, and what is it going to do? Is it going to sit here and hold this objective? Fine, take it. I'll get the other ones. But Barristan and, say, like a unit of Honor Guard, on the other hand, that's a little terrifying. That's a unit you can try to go around, but the Honor Guard will tear you up.
Another unit I've seen Barristan put to great use in is Pyromancers.
Yeah, Pyromancers are now a little bit more tanky if you can get something like
He gets them to morale 3, and then every time they pass, they heal, and they're still 6-up armor save, but...
It's like blocking 2 wounds after every attack. And if you get a crossbow behind them, and they're in melee, you can shoot into melee, and then they heal after every crossbow shot. So, yeah, you can keep the units alive for a long time.
Yep.
I've been doing Barristan in the Honor Guard, and people I've been playing against have realized pretty quickly, like, oh god, I am not killing these Honor Guard, because they get into melee, and it's just sort of like, oh, all right, I took off, I wounded 4 of them. I'm like, all right, okay, I recover 2, and they're like, all right, well, at least you're down 2. And then I shoot into melee, and I recover 2 more, and it's like, oh, no.
I definitely think there's a lot of shenanigans to be had.
But that's the best Kingsguard option I think you have. Like we said, Jaime's not so great. And then all the others, we run into this problem where you have to hold Crown to get their abilities, and it really doesn't matter. Like, Eris Oakheart would probably be pretty good in certain units if you didn't have to hold Crown to get his abilities. Because other than Peter Baelish, there's no way to get Crown without playing an NCU first. We have Joffrey, and the problem is that Joffrey has a bunch of really important tactical weaknesses. The first is that he's very predictable. So if you're using something like Red Cloaks or the Kingsguard, then you have to play Joffrey as early as possible, and your opponent knows that. So you're vulnerable to all kinds of different cards. You're vulnerable to predictable maneuvers, wildling diplomacy, intrigue and subterfuge. If your opponent has Olenna and you don't have intrigue and subterfuge, water gardens, and then he's also 5 points. You're spending all that, and really the core ability is just to hold Crown. And that's not really doing anything, like it's not a deterrent to your enemy in any specific way, it's just igniting the abilities that your attachments have, or your Red Cloaks, and on itself, that's really not worth 5 points, because, I mean, again, you've got to play him, get him to the board to get that, and, in a lot of cases, Peter is more efficient if you don't need to hold Crown for the entire game.
It depends on who you're going against with Joffrey, too, though, because, like, if you're going into Brotherhood, for example, you have the added value of every time he's on the board. Like the Sworn Knights, for example, no longer get rerolls because, as long as you don't control crowns, right? I mean, if you're going into, like, Targaryens who don't care about crowns, then, like, he loses a lot of that utility. But he gains a lot going into someone that needs crowns for their effects,
Yeah, I mean, he does help there. That's also good with Kingsmen because they have a hold crown, or if your opponent holds crown, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's awkward. I mean, like, is that worth 5 points? If we're talking about a tournament where you have to bring 2 lists and you've got to fight like 3 games, are you like, do you really want Joffrey there just for like, okay, maybe I'll fight
Yeah.
Kingsmen, or the Brotherhood Without Banners is probably pretty popular, so that might be a good case argument, but it really doesn't matter with anybody else.
I think we're starting to see more units shift to hold this zone or else ability, right?
I mean, even Targaryens do. Yeah.
Joffrey, he has that issue where he has to take the zone. And at least with Littlefinger, he's a point less expensive, and he does have his once per game where he can control the crown without taking the zone.
Yeah.
That being said, the whole point is you have these Kingsguard attachments, and they pretty much need the crown every round.
Yeah, and
I think the question you have to ask yourself is, now that you're getting these free attachment points, does that make that extra point for Joffrey more manageable? Or do you just say, why am I even bothering with this? I mean, I like Mandan more. He can make those red cloaks hit on 3s again. But then you have someone like Robert Strong sitting there who does 2 wounds every time and has resilience.
Right, and doesn't need to hold crown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real thing that kills it for me. I would like to have Joffrey matter. But the trap, I think, is that you look at some of these units, and I call them banana units, where it's like, I won't battle in this, I have a banana. Who has the banana? And if your opponent blocks Joffrey somehow and you don't have the banana, then your Kingsguard just refused to do anything, and the Red Cloak's all the same way. So the trick is that players, especially newer players, will look at that and be like, oh, thank goodness someone has the banana. I sure am glad I've got Joffrey. I better put him in my army. But the real secret is, you don't need the banana. Like, we've got better attachments that will fight even without bananas. Like, you know, the Young Lion is probably comparable to Mandan Moore. I would definitely, probably stronger because of the bonus to morale, and he doesn't need a banana. Like, there's a lot of good attachments and a lot of good units that just don't require a banana to fight. In many cases, they're better and more versatile than the banana units. So, yeah, I really don't see those being all that good. We have plenty of good options. We have really great stuff going on. We've got lots of versatility. It's a super cool time to play Lannisters, but the banana units are still banana units. They may be fun to play casually, but they're just not reliable.
Yeah, that's well said. Why bother playing this little mini game?
Yeah.
If there's no payoff.
I also want to say I'm going to print some little bananas for you now, Greg.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand out bananas.
You can put them on your units.
I have the bananas! Go, men, fight! Potassium fuel! But yeah, speaking of crowns, so one of the changes that I thought was kind of interesting and I was a little sad about is I'm not sad about the fact that they have changed how many free attacks are in the game. They've cut down on that. And I think that was a good move.
They're definitely less powerful free attacks, right? So we've seen assault orders change. Bronn lost the ability to shoot at long range. The one that Kevin Lannister and Courtney Penrose had is no longer a free charge or free attack off crown. It now gives an auto 6 charge, which is quite nice. We've seen some changes to these free attacks to where they're less potent. With the exception of We Do Not Sow out of the Greyjoys.
Yeah. I'll give that one to the Greyjoys, though. Like, the Greyjoys have this really fun and interesting ebb and flow playstyle that I think is super characterful. I personally will not begrudge them having We Do Not Sow. I mean, they kind of need it. They hit really hard, they lose a bunch of units, then they kind of sweep back, they come back with some of their other cards, and that's just how they play. I never really feel bad about it. The ones that used to upset me, I think one of the games that made me most upset was a game against another Lannister player. They had Gregor, and I had killed 2 of their units, and I still had 4 of my own. And so Gregor, he charges something, I can't remember what it was, it doesn't really matter. But he charged something, and then it was, like, in the following round, he got, like, swords, assault orders, overrun, assault orders. And Gregor personally killed 2 of my units. And I wound up losing the game. But that was so frustrating to just, like, watch one round.
Mm-hmm.
Just these free attacks murder me. Like, I was clearly winning, and then suddenly I wasn't.
I ran through 3 units without even activating my unit of Blood Riders once.
That-
It was awesome. I felt horrible for doing it because it was like round 3 or something, and it was pretty much game over, and I felt horrible, but also, you get the chance, you've got to. But, yeah, I hadn't even activated it. I took like swords or assault. I think it was assault orders for the charge and then 2 overruns.
Yeah, and you just you just like mow people down. Yeah, the free attacks, it's such a weird thing. Like, the most competitive commanders are the ones that have lots of free attacks. Because if you can just like drive through people without ever activating the unit, then you kill everything and then still have all your options.
Yeah, it gives you, like, if you get in there and then you can just retreat out or, whatever. It gives you a lot more flexibility when it's not their activation.
Yeah. So I do agree with them cutting down some or making less powerful some of the free attacks. That said, Drogo didn't actually lose that much if we're talking about the Blood Riders. We'll get to that, but I don't know. The point that I was going to make was that I'm a little sad about Kevin losing his free attack on Crown because there was some synergy there. We were talking about like, oh, holding Crown is kind of a pain. Kevin was one of the only commanders where holding Crown did something that was actively beneficial, which was that you got a free charge action. And sadly, now that's gone. So the best way to hold Crown now is to play Peter and then zone convert.
Kevin's taken some hits in the last few patches, huh?
Yeah, he's in a very hilariously little brother zone status right now. He feels like he's not bad. I still am using him, and I still like him. For sure, I think that Gregor is still going to be one of the leading commanders, because although Assault Orders has gotten worse, Gregor is still doing 2 free wounds and adding Sundering and can't be weakened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am sad, though, because Dervishes also lost their free attack. And so Dervishes, back in Season 4, that was kind of my core infantry unit, because in Season 4, Lannisters were really struggling with their infantry. Everything was kind of bad. Honor Guard hadn't been buffed yet. So the Dervishes, I found out, were like, oh, if I put Sandor in these Dervishes, then when I claim, well, I get a free attack. And I heal because Sandor has Fueled by Slaughter. So that was a fun little trick. And then I could also retreat, everything like that. They hadn't even activated. So I really like that, but Dervishes no longer get that free attack. So the Sandor trick doesn't work anymore. Dervishes were also really good with Kevin because you could get the free attack and then retreat and then attack again later.
As a Targaryen player, I love the changes to Dervishes and Stormcrow Mercs.
Oh yeah, well now you get free healing, and as a Targaryen that's quite rare, so...
I think it's great.
And the free attack on like a Stormcrow mercenary wasn't really that impactful in the past.
Uh-huh.
Anyway.
Yeah, they were already a good neutral for everybody, and yeah, now they're so solid at this point.
No, so yeah, on the Stormcrow Mercs, I think they definitely benefited the most from that one.
Double attachment discount.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the benefit to something like Adaptive on Stormcrow Mercs is I could take, let's say, neutral Sandor for a free 1 point, and then I can still take, like, Skahaz and Grey Worm. I know that's Targaryens. My point is you can still throw in a neutral attachment for free and just add to your army value, essentially. They're getting to be kind of nuts in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way for the Targs, for sure, at least, because there's not even a neutral unit for you.
Nope.
Yeah. I will say the one thing about the Kevin change that is kind of nice is that it maybe gives you some room to take the Lannisport Watch, which are still not a very good unit, but they have crit blow in theory, and they get an extra die if Kevin's in them, possibly. I haven't had any success, but I can see on paper, I can see the outlines of it. I've tried to run it and it didn't really work, but I can see it there. It could be, maybe if the stars align.
If you try enough times, it'll happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I also tried the Mountains Men, like Kevin leading the Mountains Men, and same deal. I got shot, and then I was down to 2 ranks, and the Mountains Men lost all their abilities. So that is the same problem they've always had, and that did not change at all. So, yeah. The other funny thing, though, about Kevin having that free 6-inch charge is that nobody is letting me use it. I keep playing these games with them, and everybody's just like, oh, well, Kevin's going to get me anyway. And they charge him before I can charge them. Like, I set it up, and then they're just like, nah. So I've barely gotten to use that free 6-inch charge. The bonus attack die, though, that's been useful. But anyway, though, I still think at the end of the day, those double honor guard lists are going to be pretty dominant at tournaments. I mean, now that disabling abilities is going to be so important because we have so many abilities, running units that just say, like, no, you have no abilities is I mean, that's so strong.
Yep.
Wes, you were talking about running a 3 honor guard list for our tournament tomorrow.
Is it going to be effective? Who knows? Will it be a blast to run? Yes.
For you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Not for anybody else.
No, probably not for anybody else.
Yeah, well, I would recommend Warrior Sons. I think Warrior Sons are pitched to be a pretty difficult unit to overcome in this season, just because the attack blocking is really significant, and with certain attachments in them, like a lot of people want to go for Sell Me Sons. That was always kind of the classical, haha, look at how funny this is. You can't kill this unit. They're already tanky. They don't really need more tankiness. So you could put something like Robert Strong in them, which actually does add tankiness, or you could put in your commander, or Jamie would be really good at the Young Lion.
Yeah,
because then you've got even better morale, but rerolls and vulnerable.
Even if you're taking the High Sparrow still, the free champion is still a good option because they gain a faith token on a morale test, not a panic test. So when you Warcry, you pass a morale test and you get another faith token.
Yeah. And on top of that, if you've got Sparrow Commander, you're getting cards that are at will morale tests as well, which are giving you +1 to hit and sundering. Like, Sparrow's cards are nuts now. They buffed him, and I don't know why. Like, he was pretty good before. He was like all right before. And now you can block 3 hits on a successful morale test. So I'm vaguely terrified that I'm going to be seeing 3 honor guard run with Sparrow and Selmy tomorrow. That sounds like it's going to suck.
Well, if we play, you will.
I think something, and I almost hesitate to put this out in the public thought. An attachment I think that's being overlooked for these honor guard is assault veterans.
You're not wrong.
You get intimidating presence. They can already get vicious through their own ability. Is intimidating presence better than, let's say, a Jamie reroll vulnerable token?
Intimidating presence can be. You're not wrong. I used to run Sparrow in the honor guard because Sparrow also has intimidating presence, and against the correct unit, it's a really powerful combo because that's a -3 to the morale and then extra wounds.
Mm-hmm.
So the big problem with it, though, and the only reason why I think we won't see a lot of it, is that it does come back to the issue of okay, so suppose you're fighting Drogo.
Yeah, I think anytime you can change the wounds, that's a really powerful ability. So intimidating presence, I've always put a ton of stock in. And then likewise, as you point out, Iron Resolve, I've always valued very highly. Because both of them can change the wounds taken.
It's always great failing a panic and then your opponent gets excited and you're like, yeah, but I don't take any wounds.
Yeah, I take 0. I rolled a 1, yeah. Yeah, and like I was saying, though, I'm seeing a lot more of the Iron Resolve, a lot more of the morale boosting. I also got kind of excited. I went to that same thought with the Assault Vets, not just for the Honor Guard, too, but maybe for the Mountains Men. But, yeah, the problem I ran into is that I've seen a lot of morale boosting attachments. So it's viable, but it's not predictably viable. So that's the real catch. Speaking of that, they changed the Mountain That Rides attachment.
Yeah.
And now the Brigands, I think, have to be the most efficient panic unit in the game.
If you pair Mounted Behemoth with the Brigands, they're +2 wounds on their panic.
I think they have to have suffered a loss.
With a panic token.
I think they still have to have suffered at least 1 loss of ranks before they get the bonus wounds.
Well, yeah, that's fair. It is for +1 for each of its destroyed ranks, but...
Yeah, because in the past, I always switch out... instead of using Brigands, I always use Zorse Riders, because they're practically the same unit, but the Zorse Riders are just straight up better fighters. I've used the Brigands, and the problem I've always had with Brigands is that I rarely... the enemy doesn't fail panic tests very often, and it felt like whenever they failed, it was always kind of at the wrong time. So I didn't get that much use out of Brutal Armaments. With Gregor, where they're failing a lot more reliably, I think you can plan to set it up better. And like I say, you can now run out to an enemy who actually needs it. So if you're looking at, there's these archers on the back line, these guys are fast enough that they can do a maneuver march towards that back line, and then your opponent's in trouble, because if Gregor with Brigands charges them, they're archers are still one of the units that tend not to have high morale or Iron Resolve. They could be in a lot of trouble from a group of Brigands. Only drawback is it's a 3-point attachment.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a cool looking attachment.
It is very cool looking, yeah. He's huge. He took me forever to paint. So Any excuse to use Gregor as an attachment, I suppose. Yeah, I've got some fun lists that have him. I'm not sure how competitive it is, but definitely, I was really satisfied with how frequently units were failing panic tests. Like normally, they don't, but with Gregor attached, they were failing most of them. Yeah, that for sure. That's a source of intimidating presence that looks really good now, and it's another example of a build that I think you could work towards and not necessarily be wrong. We're also seeing there's the possibility of 8 activation Lannister lists that are also really solid.
I even think some attachments, such as the Gate Warden for Lannisters, are kind of being a little overlooked. Like, it's situational.
Oh, yeah, no.
But it's free, and you have the potential to heal and get rerolls and can't use Weakened. I mean, that's pretty good for free.
Yeah, no, they would be great in a unit of Halberds. And in fact, I would be using a Gate Captain in my Halberds at this upcoming tournament, except I don't have a Gate Captain because I don't have Gold Cloaks. Because prior to this, why would I have Gold Cloaks?
I mean, that's a fair point.
Yeah, the Gold Cloaks too. It's kind of that is still one of the Lannister units that I cannot see any. What would you do with them even now? Aside from take the attachment out, like that attachment's really good, but the Gold Cloaks themselves are still like, oh, we got 7+ morale and 4+ to hit and 4+ armor. And, like, well, we need a banana before we do one of our abilities. And also, it's short range. So it's like a unit that can't take hits, that can't fight, that's meant to be on the front lines because all their abilities are short range. Like, what are you doing, Gold Cloaks? Like, what?
Yeah, they're clearly a support unit that their abilities just need to be long range.
Like, they would be fine if those abilities were long range because then they could hold an objective and you would get benefit from that. But as it is, yeah, it's just... It's like, I'm a support unit. Who are you supporting? Just me. Like, oh.
Yeah.
To be fair, that kind of fits the Gold Cloaks, though, like lore-wise.
I mean, they're just police. Yeah, they're not really supposed to be integrated into the military, I suppose. Anyway, Lannisters, so many good things for them in this patch, and we barely talked about any of the good things, mostly just complained about not... Let's not talk about the good things, let's talk about the Targaryens now, who, as I understand, a lot of people are saying that it's hard to get all of their attachment points spent.
Yeah, I think this is one of those worlds where you're looking at a reality of maybe you don't get you don't take full advantage of your free attachment points, but maybe that's okay, because maybe these Blood Rider attachments are closer to 2 points of value than 1 point of value anyway.
I was going to say, it might offset, though, with 4 of your units not being able to be weakened. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, as a Lannister player who has the option to weaken you, that's all that one of my NCUs does.
Yeah.
Pacel will just fall asleep here in his chair then, I guess. That's fine.
Yeah, I think that you would be fine not taking them all, because, I mean, taking them to 1 point is... I don't know that they were all worth 2, especially when you have, like, battle scars that you will never fully realize the ability, because, if I lose 2 ranks, I'm dead. But I definitely think they are insanely strong for 1 point. So if you don't take them all, not a huge ordeal. That said, I've also got some lists now with some infantry units in it that are, like, 3 cav and an infantry, and then you get all of your points, and you can bring something like the Unsullied Pikeman to sit on a point with Grey Worm, for example, and potentially do some healing.
Yeah, we saw the combo. Somebody was pitching this idea that you take some Unsullied with the Relentless in them, and then you have Sentinel in your Screamers behind them. Mm-hmm. So if anybody does a melee attack on those Unsullied, afterward they get their Relentless attack so they can shift to give room for the free attack from Sentinel on the Dothraki behind them.
I mean, you'd have to get them to charge you, though, and I feel like that's one of those times that, putting something like... I've done it before, even before they were free, putting the Unsullied Officer or a couple different attachments in the Pikemen, nobody touches them. And that's what happens, is they just don't get touched, because it's like you're pretty much committing suicide if you go in, so people they just don't. Which is great for sitting on a point, But especially before, when it was a 9-point unit, it was like, well, this is a waste.
This is 1/4 of my army that is going to just sit here on this objective and do nothing else all game.
The good thing about the pikemen is you can use them offensively too if you have to. Like it's not the worst thing. You give up their set for charge, but they still are 7 dice on 3s, and if you have relentless in them or Grey Worm or something like that, you still get value, but it's still expensive to give up. Such a strong ability.
Another thing that I know has been discussed is the idea that dragons have become kind of obsolete. And I'm actually not sure if that's going to be the case. We were talking a little bit about this, I've got the warrior sons and they can block a lot of damage, but dragons are such a weirdly designed unit. They're one of the only things that really does what they do anymore. Giants also used to be similar, but no more. But when they land on something, they just deal if it's a 3-rank unit, it'll be 3 wounds plus a D3 pretty much outright. And you can't weaken them. Your armor doesn't matter. If you have defensive abilities, they don't matter. And then the dragons are vicious.
I mean, you can weaken them.
Well, you can weaken.
It just doesn't really matter.
Yes. It's like, try to roll snake eyes for me again, please. Yeah. So unless they get snake eyes, they're going to hit, and they're going to do all those wounds, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, ever. So we're probably going to be looking at Greyjoys running Iron
Makers.
Iron Makers. So we're going to be seeing Greyjoys with Iron Makers and the Drowned Prophets. Going to be so hard to chew through unless you set a dragon on them, in which case, who cares?
Yeah.
None of their abilities matter.
I mean, dragons took a little bit of a hit. One of them, I think, has been due since they existed, and that's the 2 ones will always fail a panic. I've always thought it was crazy that panic tests are the only thing you can pretty much always auto-pass. That said, I do think they should be reduced to a 3 then, because why am I paying for a 2-up morale that fails? It's a little silly to me. I wouldn't be surprised, and I know 3 dragon lists aren't super, super common anyways. A lot of the ones I've seen are just 2. So in a way, the free attachment still made them stronger, because again, you can take your other unit, and you can throw Skahas with Fueled by Slaughter, or Grey Worm to do some healing in it. And if you really wanted to, you could say put Dany in Blackguards or Stormcrow, or why do I keep saying Stormcrow? Golden Company crossbows, and you could take the Miri attachment, because the Miri attachment, I don't know, somebody at CMON loves Miri Mazdur. They removed all negative effects, so now instead of taking a wound, if you roll a 3, it just does nothing, which would be a bummer, but okay, I'm willing to roll the dice, I guess die in that case. So, yeah, she's a great NCU, but it might be a worthy trade-off,
Yeah. Well, for 1 point, Miri now, it's almost funny because you've got the NCU Miri was kind of one of the best NCUs that you have. And now they're like, oh, but how do you feel about attachment Miri? And it's like they're trying to make her competitive with her NCU self because...
Yeah, I mean, I think the NCU is definitely still better, and I think you'll see her most of the time there, but I definitely want to try her out as the attachment at least once or twice. I mean, there's what was the combo I had? There's a combo with Unsullied. Oh, let me just find it now. That you could potentially do a minimum of you could potentially do 3 heals each round to your unit from
Marcellin.
Marcellin in the Unsullied Sword Masters with Miri in them. It's because she ignores attachment limits. So, if you pair her with Dany, Commander, you get Dany, you get Jorah, and you get Miri all in one unit, and you just get insane abilities.
I think that's something that's been almost overlooked a bit, is the ability to ignore attachment limits has just shot through the roof in terms of value.
Absolutely.
We see that with Miri. You have that in Starks with the Crannogman. Baratheons you can ignore with Davos Commander.
Night's Watch have Satin. Greyjoys get outflanked for free.
Yeah, for people struggling to fit their points in, the ability to stack 2 units or 2 attachments into 1 unit goes a long way.
I will say, though, removing the malice from Miri, I think is a good thing. One of the really frustrating things about Lannisters, we were just talking about how Jaime's main ability is buffing your opponent. And it's one of the reasons why nobody really uses him. Because aside from the fact that he's a banana unit, and that's a big pain in the butt, you've got all these panic-related abilities in the Lannisters, and you're just like, here, have some bonus morale. I don't like it when my cards succeed anyway. You have a good time.
Right.
Miri was that way. It was like, why would you use why would you use an attachment that's hurting you? Or even has the chance to hurt you? That kind of sucks. Qyburn, like they changed Qyburn and they made it to where Qyburn now he used to just like make you lose armor.
Now it's a vulnerable token.
Yeah, which is still bad. And means that you're still not going to use Qyburn because all the other attachments that are good don't hurt you.
The Bolt and Tactics deck. Hey, you have this card that gives you Sundering, and it used to have 2 downsides. They got rid of one of them, but there's still the, is it still the token, or is it still the +1?
I think it's +1 wound.
Sometimes it's like they include these trade-offs, and like I think the idea behind it is like you're supposed to get like a really powerful ability you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. But we just don't see that come through with the execution. It's like, no, this is a normal ability with a downside I don't want.
Yeah, it's like, oh, +1 to hit. Cool. Also, your men explode. Oh, okay. Like, I don't need this. So I don't know. Miri losing the Malice, like, that's a really strong attachment and everything. But aside from that, it's great that she lost the Malice because, for goodness sake, Joffrey is also comically that way. All of his cards. I don't know if they're ever going to look at... Like, Joffrey is something that feels like a joke commander. And I don't know if he's just supposed to stay that funny indefinitely or if maybe one day they're going to be like, you know what?
It does beg the question, where are they doing things for balance, for in-game balance, and where are they trying to inject some fluff? And, like, I don't think Joffrey was ever, like, a brilliant strategic mastermind commander, so maybe their intent is for him to always be kind of a joke.
Well, I think that's one of the hard things about picking an existing IP and making a game off of it. I mean, if you came out and you made, somebody who, like Joffrey, who wasn't a brilliant, I mean, he's a child, he wasn't a great tactical commander, and you just made him awesome, it would be like, this doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. It would be the opposite of the Tywin problem. Like, he's not a great commander in the game, but he's supposed to be like this tactical mastermind. Or, for you, Kurt, Mounted Stannis.
Yeah, don't get me started. His greatest victory in books.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. All of that said about Miri and commanders, though, one thing for fun games, I'm kind of excited to try. I am really excited to bring back a Miri zombie list. Pit fighters at 5 points might just be great for that. Downside is pit fighters with Skahas might actually be a viable option now. I still think they need to change pit fighter rage to not always take 2 wounds, even if they turn it into like Stark Fury, where it's -1 wound for each rank you have destroyed. But you'll have Skahas with Fueled by Slaughter to heal up afterwards. And at 5 points, 7 dice on 3s. Who cares about precision? I think they've got a lot better. And a Miri zombie list to just make 2 ultimate unsullied units would be hilarious and fun if it works.
Oh my gosh. I totally forgot that she can do that.
So even if you really want to do zombie...
Because her other ability is so good, but she can...
Yeah.
And that's not limited to infantry attachments.
Nope. It gets weird to track with Cav, but you can do it, yeah.
If you were running like an all-screamer list, a very glass cannon, squishy, heavy, hard-hitting list.
You could bring all of the Blood Riders into a new Blood Rider unit.
You could make a Voltron Blood Rider unit.
Why they just become the Blood Riders again?
Yeah.
But better.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be hilarious. It would suck, but it would be hilarious. And I want to do it.
Pit fighters being kind of viable is funny. I haven't seen a pit fighter ever since my friend realized that he was misreading the pit fighter rage ability. I remember when he first started playing, he brought the pit fighters and he was like, yeah, I complete this attack and then you suffer 2 wounds. And I was like, oh, that's really good. And then we looked at that rule a little closer. Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. And then he was like, oh, I see no reason to ever use this unit. I was just like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I bought them because they're really cool looking models, and I don't even think I've taken them out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, they look really cool, but they've just been so junk. They still kind of are, but they're 5 points, so.
Yeah.
I think at the time, at their release, they were one of the few ways Targaryens could play the token game. But subsequently, Targs have gained so many other avenues to play the token game, so...
I'm pretty sure we still had, like, the Miri and some other token generation when the Pit Fighters came out. But It's one of the problems I've noticed with Targs in general, though, is like, everything is squishy. There's not a lot of heals. So then they introduce pit fighters, and it's like, oh, you're squishy with a 5-up armor, and you can kill yourself.
Yeah. Self-squishing.
Great combo.
I gotta save time now. I don't have to wait for the enemy to do it. I'll kill myself.
Exactly. But they'll be happy doing it. They do have a morale 6, so they'll be happy while they kill themselves.
They were gonna fight Daenerys for their right to be squished, for everyone's enjoyment.
That is true.
Oh, but anyway, though, so speaking of all infantry, and we were talking about how Stannis not super great at cavalry and everything like that, but Kurt! Your Baratheons, who you're saying you're actually going to leave because the Lannisters have so many more options now, they could get Sentinel on their horses.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start this off with a small note about the patch as a whole. A lot of things that were already strong got better, like Screamers, for instance, which we were just talking about.
Yeah, and Honor Guard are going to have scarier stuff in them.
Yeah, and Castle Rock Honor Guard, which were already a top-tier unit. Like, even things like Kingsmen, which were already very, very good. And then things that were bad oddly got worse. And you see that with Andrew Estermont Commander.
Yeah.
He was already, I think, the worst Baratheon Commander, or second worst or something. And then they changed Assault Orders, which, while I like the Assault Orders change...
Andrew could have gotten something. He needed a bone.
Yeah, like, maybe we should have thought about a little bit of the impact of that change on some of these other... What the ripple effects of that were, and then make some compensatory changes elsewhere to compensate? Like... Why would anyone run Andrew, Commander?
It would be nice to see. I do feel like for the past couple of patches, like I feel like as a Lannister player, I've been pretty happy. Like season 4, I felt really neglected. Like I just didn't have infantry, and then after season 4, as things went on, I started getting more options. And now season 6, it feels like, oh boy, like I'm in such a good place. I feel like the Free Folk also got a lot of pretty good stuff out of this.
Yeah.
So some of these factions definitely got a lot more focus. I think that maybe the Baratheons kind of just weren't under the microscope for season 6. It's true, you look at it, and I've had friends who play Baratheons, and what I've been seeing now is just like Iron Resolve in every single unit. But that's because if you're playing Stannis side, that's kind of one of the best attachments that they're being offered.
Right, they have the... I don't say this to say, woe is me, Baratheons have nothing good. I'm going to go over some stuff that they got that's really great. I think this is the second attachment patch in a row that we've seen some really woeful attachments left in the dust. And Andrew Estermont Commander comes to mind. Mounted Stannis, King at the Wall comes to mind. They are just awful. They've been awful. Stannis has gotten consecutively worse because they nerfed Champions of the Stag. Then they also nerfed Tactical Approach. And the commander attachments themselves, just... Andrew Estermont, first of the Kingsmen, is such a nothing ability.
Yeah, they are awkward. Renly got it a little bit better for attachments, but even so... They kind of have the same issue with their Kingsguard. Well, they're not Kingsguard. With the Rainbow Guard that the Kingsguard do, where you've got some abilities that are like, well, you have to hold crown. But unlike the Lannisters, who have the option to somewhat detrimentally take Joffrey, they have no reliable way to take crown. You could do Peter.
Well, Baratheons have access to Alistair Florent. So they have that, and they have Peter as well. So they do have some tools to control crown. Rainbow Guard, yeah, well... Should we start Renly's side? I guess we'll go Renly's side first. Renly's side, I think, actually is the more interesting of the loyalties. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily the stronger loyalty to come out of this patch, but I think they're the more interesting loyalty to come out of this patch. I think you're looking at 8 activation lists more, going 5 combat units and 3 NCUs. But you can squeeze in a bunch of 5 and 6 point infantry and get some pretty decent attachments in them and still have 13 points for NCUs and still get your Olenna 5-pointer. So I'm looking at Highguard and Pikemen, Thornwatch Sentinel, and Baratheon Sentinels as the big winners on Renly's side. With these Highguard and Pikemen, there's numerous attachments that benefit them. We've seen the change to Courtney Penrose. He still has tactical reposition, but now he has an auto 6 charge And he is a 2-point attachment, but he can be reduced by 1 if you include Renly. And Renly is not bad in Highgarden Pikeman himself because he has boldness and courage, so he gives him an extra attack die.
I am looking at this, the Highgarden Pikeman. That is for... So on a chart, you run across the board and you do 11 hits? 11 hits, potentially.
Yeah, so for a 5-point unit, like, that's not bad.
Oh, no.
You look at...
that's land cavalry.
Right.
These men are running down. They're just like sprinting down the field.
Now they don't have the sundering, but yeah, they're very much a charge centric unit, and because they're so cheap, that enables you to get that extra unit in to take advantage of getting use out of all of your free attachment points, which is the struggle right now for Baratheons. Sentinels. I've been running Brienne Rainbow Guard in Baratheon Halberdiers, but I think you could just do the same thing, but stick her in Sentinels. And now Sentinels, I think, are finally to the point where they're going to start seeing play. Because I think they've been bad for a long time. Brienne gives them rerolls, which helps take care of that 4-up to hit, which has been their problem for the longest time. And they have Sentinel in a faction that really needs help on the movement front. So now Sentinels go from being what used to be a terrible unit to maybe a really, really great choice. A 5-point unit with rerolls and Sundering and Sentinel. And that Sentinel's going to be huge because I think you need, since I think Renly Side is going to be losing a lot of their cavalry elements, you're going to need that Sentinel to kind of make up for it. We were just talking about Screamers earlier and how they just got better.
Yeah, you can see them tearing it up.
And the equivalent, the rough equivalent on Renly's side was Riders of Highgarden. They also have Crowned Scouts, so we have 2 6-point cavalry options. But there's no in-house cavalry attachments for Renly. So it's like they've swapped what the factions are doing in terms of in the Baratheon loyalties. Stannis has an attachment, but he has no good cavalry to stick him in. Renly has decent cavalry, but he has no attachments to put in them. So I think we're going to see less Crowned Scouts and less Riders of Highgarden on Renly's side, and I think you'll see more of these cheap infantry so that you can get your attachment points in. The other big winner in terms of infantry attachments, Stag Knight Noble, cross loyalty, he's solid. He has Go Down Fighting and Iron Resolve. You have Pikeman Captain, which Boldness and Courage, we were just saying, is pretty nice to have. The Leadership Follower, it's just +1 morale when you're in long range of a commander. So it's like a reverse emboldened, kind of. It's a nice ability to have. Just, can we have a different name? Like Inspired, or, I don't know.
Sycophant!
Something other than Leadership Follower. And then the other, the one that's been in the back pocket here, Thornwatch Sentinel. Dauntless, Furious Charge, and Pathfinder. That's 3 abilities for 1 point.
Pathfinder, I think, is another one of those abilities that, especially for Baratheons, are great. It doesn't technically increase your mobility, but it does when you ignore any detrimental terrain, you know?
Mm-hmm. And this is where the Thornwatch themselves come into play. If we're going to be seeing less Renly cavalry, well, then you're going to want units like Sentinels and Thornwatch, which have Swift Strike, Regroup, this ability to kind of bounce around the battlefield to kind of make up for that loss of complement of cavalry. So that's where I see Renly's side, more or less.
One thing that I've got friends that'll play Baratheons, and of all the lists that have made me feel really awkward as a Lannister, like again, we've said the Lannisters have been really powerful, but the Lannister card game is awkward. And the Baratheons have made it the most awkward. The Sentinels, they have Dauntless, and then you've got your Iron Resolve and these with the Stag Knight Nobles and everything. The Lannisters have always had this effect that I call the Lannister Rake Slap, which is you tell your opponent to take a panic test because that's one of your abilities as a Lannister player. Subjugation of power. I subjugate you to power. And of course, they pass the test, and then something good happens to them as a result of that, or something bad happens to you. In the past, a lot of time, it was Glory Seekers. So you try to make a Glory Seeker fail a panic test, and then they would pass it, and you take a wound. So that's, you step on a rake, it slaps you in the face. With Baratheons now, I feel like just nonstop, there's so many, all the attachments are just like, oh, I pass morale, I restore 1 wound. Also, I'm going to play that card that gives me 2 more wounds. Mm-hmm. So subjugation of power now is such a liability. There are other factions that also have these kinds of things, but Baratheons have just got it in spades at this point. Lannister should be throwing away subjugation. Like, do not play it on a Baratheon player. It's so bad for you.
Yeah, you really want to use it only if you have both of the zones to make it better.
I mean, even
get the -2.
then, do you risk, like, if they've got a Thornwatch Sentinel, like, do you risk, the odds are still that they'll pass it, and then even if you go from like a 6 to an 8, there's 40% odds they pass it anyway and then recover 1 wound, and if they got the card, they recover 2 more wounds. You might hurt them, or you might help them.
Renly side, I've always found that I don't like playing them into Lannisters, or really any kind of panic shenanigan faction, because Renly side really wants to pass their panic tests. And that's true for Stannis side too, but with Renly side, they have less tools to ensure that they do, whereas Stannis side has some R'hllor stuff that can, yes. Now, with Renly's Baratheons, you have a lot of healing, typically. There are some vulnerabilities to a healing build. If you can eliminate a unit before it has a chance to heal, or shut down its healing altogether with someone like Oberyn Commander, it can completely undo the whole list. I think I see Renly going more into his cheap infantry, and I really don't think we'll see... I think we'll see potentially less cavalry, and I think we'll see potentially less of the expensive infantry units on Renly's side, so Stag Knights and Rose Knights, I think, might be seen taking a back seat a bit.
Of course, you will see people online telling you that Rose Knights are the biggest, bestest unit that anyone has ever thought of ever.
It won't die. What do? You walk away from it because it's speed 4 and it has no offensive punch.
It's so slow. It's so comically slow. Yeah. You just...
Now, Stannis side has some interesting things to grapple with. You know, Kingsmen are kind of like the equivalent to Castle Rock Honor Guard for Baratheons. They're just as good as ever. And now you can throw a free attachment in them. And man, we talked a little bit about that Stag Knight Noble. He has to go down fighting an Iron Resolve. But have you seen what happened to the Red Priestess? Oh my goodness. Take a wound, which is a downside. But this is one of those cases where I think the downside is actually worth what they're giving you. +1 to hit, and then a panicked or a vulnerable token of your choice. You only get 1. She formerly gave 2, but now it's just 1 token, but it is +1 to hit.
With rerolls if the opponent doesn't have crown and everything. So
hey, are the Kingsmen not going to reroll every time and just fish for 6s if they're hitting on 2s? Now to be fair, they could already do that in the past with Ours is the Fury to get them that +1 to hit. But now it's like you could just have it on all the time.
And then they're vulnerable on top of that. Yeah.
I see the best units getting better and some of the worst units getting worse. The other big winner is Lightbringers, which were already arguably the best unit on Stannis Baratheon loyalty. Throwing 7 dice, hitting on 3s, and hey, and again, I really like this change, but now True Conviction works on the same number of ranks instead of just the lower amount of ranks. Now, I do believe True Conviction needed this change because it was such a nothing ability before. But you're taking one of the best ranged units in the game and you're giving it one of the abilities that made Skyreach Bowman such a terror to go up against. And that's, almost always having rerolls. We have seen range take a step back with the change to Brawn, but on Stannis' side, I think you could see double Lightbringer lists and run Davos attachment in one, and probably Brian Faring in the other one, because both of them will give you True Conviction.
I actually don't think that range has taken a backseat in this. There's so many attachments now that will do things that hurt you when you attack them. Like we were talking about Relentless with the Unsullied, for example. Well, Relentless doesn't trigger at range.
Relentless will work on a ranged attack. Now, you only get to do a melee attack back, but if you're engaged with another unit and someone shoots into you...
So no, I was imagining you don't charge the Unsullied. You get out of combat from the Unsullied and then shoot them to death. Right? So I think that there's still plenty of... there's a good amount of utility for a double archer list, especially if your opponent has a lot of punishing attachments that are trying to bait you into charging them. You could just choose not to charge, play the objectives, fire at them with range. I think the Lannisters have the option to do that, and I think also the R'hllor Lightbringers are looking at that right now. They're both great units for that. Renly struggling a little bit more. Renly's got to rely a little bit more on those Thornwatch.
The Lore Lightbringers have it, and they have the attachments to go with them. So I think you could see some double Lightbringer stand-aside lists. I'm not necessarily a fan of gunline style play. I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest for the game, but I think that is one direction you could see stand-aside shifting. I haven't seen like big list building changes coming out of this for Stannis. I still think home base for him is 7 activation, 4 combat unit, 3 NCU. And I see that kind of struggling. Like, let's say you run Stannis Rightful Heir, and you have him in a unit of Kingsmen. And then you probably had your Lightbringers, and then you throw Davos in there. And then you want your Crownland Scouts, and hey, you've got the points, so Dragon Snow Noble attachment, there you go. And then you probably had one other infantry unit of some sort. So let's say you go with Baratheon Halberdiers, and then Stannis gets a free Devon Seaworth, so you throw that in there. Then you add your NCUs, and you have only used 2 out of 4 attachment points. The only 2-point attachment Stannis still has is Justin Massey. And Justin Massey has been, let's say it, bad ever since Tactical Approach got nerfed. And then you look across the board and you see, hey, Tyrion over there, he's a 1-point attachment. And Samwell Tarly and Night's Watch also dropped to being a single point for battle
Look,
plan.
Sam,
and bookkeeping is better than Threaten is.
It's all Sam does. Look, it's his only job, aside from whining and moping and thinking about having sex with that wildling girl. I can't remember. He doesn't do anything
now,
else.
The only,
Massey's got
the
other jobs.
Yeah. The other option for the battle plan was Ario Hota, right? Yep, and he dropped to 1 point. So Justin Massey is now the only battle plan attachment.
He's got Threatened. I mean, it's weakened is pretty good.
Threaten's better than Mark Target, maybe? I would say in the past it was, but now there's so many things that ignore weaken tokens.
Just don't play him against Targs or Gregor or
right. Yeah.
Right.
Just the other 2-point attachment that Baratheon Stannis had was Axel Florent, but he's 1 point now. And he is don't get me wrong, he's a pretty decent 1-point attachment. He can give R'hllor affiliation, he can give you Vicious, and always rolling highest attack die, and you take a wound if you roll a 1, and he also brings Intimidating Presence. So he might be an even better choice for your Kingsman than the Red Priestess. But then you're running into that same issue again, where you've only used 2 out of 4 attachment points.
I mean, I guess you're kind of stuck at similar case to Renly, where you've got to be using a lot of smaller units trying to do an 8 activation list.
Maybe. But the problem is, Stannis doesn't have access to Highguard and Pikemen or Thornwatch Sentinel.
Yeah, and well, he's got his R'hllor Faithful.
He does have R'hllor Faithful. So maybe this will be the patch of R'hllor lists. R'hllor Lightbringers and R'hllor Faithful, and that's where we'll see our Red Priestesses and our Axel attachments, and maybe that's the way forward for Stannis side.
We talked about the Blood Riders, and how they're not really a 1-point unit going down, or Dragons, and how it might be worth not taking all 4 free points. You could also be pretty nasty with Baratheons, and this free attachment points would allow you to take, 3 units of Kingsmen with a Red Priestess, with Axel Florent or whoever else, and a unit of Lightbringers with their insane, I'm always going to have rerolls. So then you have 3 units that potentially have to be killed 3 times.
Yeah.
And a really good ranged unit that's always going to have rerolls.
Yeah, maybe. That could be. And then you have the issue that I ran into at Europe at the Invitational. Hey, come back here, let my Stannis hit you. No, I'm not going to do that. So I guess you could see maybe early on triple Kingsmen going up against triple Castle Rock Honor Guard type lists. I wish they had done more attachments that could ignore the usual attachment restriction, because the only thing we have on Stannis' side is Davos Commander.
I think that would have been a pretty fun change. Even if they were, a whole bunch of relatively weak 1-pointers, just being able to throw it in. What was it Mickey called it? Build-A-Bear? I mean, it would really, really allow you the ability to take those, like Lannister Guardsmen or your Sentinels or any of these other mid 5-point units and make them worth taking to the table.
Yeah, who knows? It just goes back to my point that I think the best units got better. I think the worst units got worse.
In fairness, I guess if they did do more attachment limit ignoring, it would all just go into your Lightbringers and your Honor Guard and everything, right? So those units would still just be getting better. The big problem is just that the struggling units have to improve a little bit. That's the only way. And I do think that the free attachments, it's nice because now you've got the separation of, okay, we've got all these attachments, they do all these neat things, and then you can start looking at units as being discretely what they're worth and not really thinking about, but what would they be worth if I put a Barristan in them or whatever? Because that was one of the issues for the Lannisters, for example. We've got the halberds, right? So the halberdiers, they hit on 4s, they've got 4 armor, 6+ morale. That's like every Lannister unit, except for these guys have set for charge and sundering. So halberdiers, they're 5 points, but they're already better than pretty much both of your 6-point options. They're better than gold cloaks. They're
certainly better than Lannister guardsmen.
Yeah, Lannister guardsmen generally don't compete with them at all. And the problem that you kind of look at is you're saying like, all right, so halberdiers, they're 5 points. Before attachments were free, you could ask yourself, would be like, well, are halberdiers with a 1-point attachment, are they better than Lannisport City Watch? And they were, of course. But now at the very least, when you're just looking at this and you're saying like, okay, Lannister halberds, 5 points. Like, are they better than City Watch, which are 6 points? And I think they are, but that's something that you can kind of look at now and say like, well, we're not asking what the attachments are doing in them or anything necessarily. Like, they're there, we can do lots of things with the attachments. But if you take all that away and you just look at the unit and you just say like, this is going to be 5 points and this is going to be 6 points, then maybe they can start balancing with this idea that the units have a constant value and we're not trying to figure out their value once you put in an attachment or something like that. It could make it easier to like understand and reverse engineer and break down and improve units. So maybe in future patches we might see these weaker units improve. And that would be great. We could start using them. I mean, my City Watch have been gathering dust ever since season 3.
Yeah.
Well, since season 4 they made the change. So I'd like to see those changes. And I do think it's kind of unfortunate that the Baratheons didn't get a really close look. They got some things that were buff, but it is true, it doesn't really feel like they got a lot of synergy. Compared to the Lannisters, got away great with this patch, but the Baratheons could use a little more joy, and it'd be really nice if they got it. Because, I mean, for some of these factions are really happy to have this change, but the Baratheons are a little bit like, what do we do with it? What did you expect us to do with it?
Yeah. The biggest wins for Baratheons were the change to True Conviction, which again helps the archers, and I think the Red Priestesses maybe, and the Thornwatch Sentinels. We did see some changes to the Rainbow Guard, some really decent changes. Giard Morgan and Robar Royce both dropped from 2 points to 1, so that was nice. Something else dropped from 2 to 1, which was less nice. The original Loras attachment dropped from 2 points to 1 point. He used to have Expert Duelist and Precision, and now they've taken the Precision away. One Free Wound is good, but then you have to remember Carl, and he can ignore attachment limits. And here's the Knight of Flowers, Loras Tyrell, one of the best swordsmen, certainly on Renly loyalty.
Well, in fairness to Carl, he is the best swordsman with his personal sword, according to Asha.
There you go.
So, of course he gets special treatment.
The other, but I've been pounding the table on this for 2 patches in a row now. This will be patch number 3. I would like to see these Rainbow Guard attachments that switched sides be able to be fielded in both loyalties. Giard Morgan, Bryce Caron, and Parman Crane, all 3 went over to Stannis' side after Renly died. So I don't think any of those 3 attachments would have any game-breaking combinations with any Stannis loyalty units or any Stannis commanders or cards. It would be really nice, just flavorful change if they would eliminate the Renly-only loyalty to those 3 Rainbow Guard attachments and let them go on both sides, because they do in the books.
It would be nice to, now that attachments are free, in any expansion to your options to play and build is good.
And this was the attachment patch. So if they were ever going to do that, you'd think this would be the patch to do it.
I think the only faction that took a massive hit in this, I think, is Bolton's on a whole
Yes.
just
Bolton's got...
they're really in a bad place, I think, personally.
Bolton's almost got
Yeah.
comically shafted. I've been seeing like people on Reddit who are like, I think, like, and they were arguing about it. They were like, I think that the rule book maybe made a mistake when they said that I couldn't take neutral attachments because I'm a Bolton player, and I don't know if you know this, but my Flademen don't have an attachment. And I can't. It's like, how am I supposed to spend the points? Gosh, I was sitting down with my friends and we were trying to figure out. We did manage to build like one army that could spend all 4 free attachment points, and it wasn't like a good army, but it was one army, and I think it was like a. It might have been a 5-2, or it might have been something ridiculous like a 6-2.
Yeah, this is a good point, because for our listeners, Bolton's, before this patch, had a free Bastard Boy attachment, and they still have that on top of now the 4 free attachment points. So they effectively have like a 5 free
Don't
attachment
they
point
also still
that
have
you
bin
use.
bones for free if you take Bastards Girls?
You can, yeah, and they just can't spend
So
it all.
technically they could take all of 6 points if they could find a way to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a fire sale on Bolton attachments, and yet none of them are good.
I mean,
Okay, some of the Bastard Boys are good, but for the most part, it's just so hard to figure out anything that you could do with them that wouldn't ultimately harm you.
yeah, they're in a really bad spot, which is disappointing.
Yeah. The poor Boltons. And then you look at them and you look at the Brotherhood without banners, and it's just like, oh man. Like, the Brotherhood without banners is so good right now and so powerful. And then you look over at the Bolton. These are the 2 mini factions. And I really think that they're also getting the stealth nerf. So I was talking about, like, yeah, I feel like Subjugation of Power, I'm really just healing my opponents with it. It's a really bad card. I prefer to mill it with Tyrion and everything like that. Well, we don't have a battle plan on the Boltons. So the Boltons just get their cards, and it's all like panic-based and everything else, and all their abilities are panic-based. And now they're going to be looking at armies that have Iron Resolve more frequently, that have Dauntless more frequently, that are healing on wounds, blocking the panic and everything like that. And Boltons have like 7 morale on their lower unit. So if you're trying to fill those attachments, you're taking like 7 morale, 5+ armor. You're incredibly frail. You're incredibly likely to run away. Whereas your opponent is incredibly unlikely to run away. And the advantage they're supposed to have is vicious. But the enemy has 5+ morale or 4+ morale, or if we're looking at Barristan or the Young, it's going to be 3+ morale now. They can't fight bears or like wolves or anything. Like, their mechanics just don't work. I don't know why they don't just accept that panic is not very viable. Like, why don't they just buff the units? Give them 4+ armor. Give them slightly better morale.
Yeah.
Just buff them.
Just so you guys know, while we were talking,
The poor guys.
you can take all 6 attachment points in a Bolton list, but you will only run 1 NCU.
I was just messing around with the builder myself, and I have a 0 in CU Bolton list.
Yeah, I got Spearmen with the Commander, Bastard Girls with Ben and Damon, Cutthroats with Ramsey, Cutthroats with Allen. This isn't the best. Blackguards with Grunt, and then Jane Poole for the NCU. 40 points, all 6 free attachments.
There you go.
And they're all cowards. That's the worst part.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the Lannisters.
Hey, Blackguards did get
have
buffed,
7
though.
up morale.
I know. So it's really nice that you can put the Gregor attachment in the Brigands now, and you can, like, terror bomb people with them. But the Brigands have 7 morale. So as soon as anything sneezes in their direction, they panic and run.
Guardsmen have 7. Gold Cloaks have 7.
Yeah. The Stonecrows have 7. See, at least you can mitigate this now, though, by running Barristan or Young Lion in those units.
Yeah.
So the Lannisters still got away from this a little better. The Boltons have nothing. The Boltons are just terrified. They're nervous and insecure and don't know what they're supposed to be doing anymore. They're like, we have free points. Like, there's no units I can fit these guys in. What am I doing?
I mean, they did add a mechanic to the Boltons, which I think is underwhelming.
Yes.
And what I really want to
Prisoners,
say, though, is they did buff the Blackguards. So we have another 3-up armor, 5-speed unit.
That's another
Kurt,
thing.
how does that make you feel?
Every
I heard the
freaking
rant
faction.
about this. Yeah.
Every freaking faction's 3-up armor units are speed 5 now, except for Baratheon.
Yeah, like the Baratheons.
It's beyond
I think Lannister
infuriating. It
Guardsmen are
feels
still
like it's
4.
just personal at this point.
I mean, it would change so much. if the Rose Knights had 5-inch movement, they would. I mean, they would be a solid unit at that point.
They'd be an option.
Yeah.
I just had to point those out for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Wes.
Oh yeah.
Goes along with the Tully Sworn Shields and the Castle Rock Honor Guard from the previous patch. Yes.
I also got quite a laugh when you were talking about the bears for the free folk, and you were like going over the stats, and you were like, yes, the bears cost 0 points. A Dragonstone Noble cost 4 points. Gosh, they didn't touch the bears either. That was another thing. I think a lot of competitive players were hoping that they would change the rules on the bears, and they did not.
Deep Strike Bears, if you're not using the community FAQ, is still
Speaking of community FAQ, I am actually disappointed that they actually went and updated the rulebook finally and didn't integrate a single FAQ thing into the rulebook. So we still have an ever-growing FAQ and a rulebook that doesn't answer its own questions.
That is weird. That they would do the errata for the rulebook, update the rulebook, but then not put the errata into the rulebook.
Oh well. I mean, it's a very minor thing, but it's just like, why not, you know?
The Bears Deep Strike is even worse now since the attachments are free. But even if you don't Deep Strike the Bears, I've played against Bearmageddon lists, and it's so hard to deal with because it's just sort of like there's a bunch of bears here. Like you could kill them, one at a time, but they're not worth any victory points. So you're like slowly trying to work them down. It's just wasting all your activations. And it like if they're blocking you,
as we're all complaining about it,
yeah,
I would just like to highlight that I think, for the most part, Bearmageddon has been banned at probably every local area because the community in this game is pretty good. Like I've heard stories about other games where it would be Bearmageddon everywhere.
You just have to buy all the boxes.
And at least the community for this game said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Well, because it would just be the only thing you could do is bear. Because it would just be like, I deploy my army and then I deploy all my bears and now our bears fight. It would just be a giant bear. It would be like.
I kind of want to do it now. Not gonna lie.
Honestly, it does sound pretty funny. When it's fair on both sides. I would like to see other armies. So yeah, I'm surprised they didn't change that. Maybe we'll get it later on, but it could also be that maybe Simon is just saying the mitigating factor is that someone would have to buy that many skin changers, which is pretty expensive.
Well, that combined with they probably haven't seen it so much happening because the community has said no to it too. So maybe it's just low on their priority list because
everybody's
kind of been fixed already. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no official ban because it's banned unofficially everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and as a personal grudge, I guess as we're wrapping up, a personal grudge, I'm still mad that stone throwers exist. I was really hoping that they would be removed from the game and they would demand that everyone just melt that model down into a hunk of plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that they could do with stone throwers, but as far as units go, that is my least favorite unit in the entire game. I hate that they have infinite range. They have GPS-guided stones that can hit moving units from across the board no matter where you are.
Can't put condition tokens on them.
Yeah.
You don't get... Yeah, they're horrible.
Yeah. You can't interact with them. One of the most frustrating games that had me seeing red was my friend once, he deployed a stone thrower, and I had a casual list. I was doing something with, Mountains Men or whatever, and he just, puts the stone thrower in the corner of the table. And it's just, it's first turn, it bombards the mountain men, they lose all abilities, okay. And then, after that, it was just torture. He's just taking the free attacks over and over again. I finally get up to this stupid thing with my cavalry, and he sacrifices Quarren. And so for the rest of the round, my cavalry can do nothing but make angry faces at this stone thrower. It continues to bombard my men. And after that game, I told him, I says, you have to tell me if you're going to be deploying a stone thrower, because I am going to play an alternate list. There's no way I'm doing this again. That was not even, I was
not
angering.
even close to fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're if we're taking 1 minute's dogpile on Night's Watch here, then remember how we talked about all the free attacks going away for the most part, with the exception of We Do Not Sow?
Yes.
Jon Snow still has For the Watch for a free charge.
Oh yeah. I mean, they didn't completely go away, all the free attacks and everything. I think for the most part, are we gonna? I mean, we haven't really talked about whether or not Micah can fit his attachment points into the double scorpion list.
Does he need the attachment points in that list?
Does he even need them? Yes, is the
He'll
big question.
probably figure out a way to squeeze something else in there and be like, cool, thanks, man.
Night's Watch still has enough decent 2-point attachments.
I think we'll see a lot of...
Watch Captains still exist.
Well, and they have...
Yeah.
I mean, they've got, the trackers with their cavalry attachment. That's a pretty decent combo. They don't have a huge litany of attachments, but I think they've got enough good ones that they walked away pretty decent, I think.
Right, and you could still take, Cold Hands mounted attachment is still an amazing cavalry attachment.
Yeah.
Slap him in Vanguard.
I also want to say this isn't Night's Watch, but we're talking about attachments. Brotherhood still gets their free attachment.
Yep, same as Bolton's, yeah.
So you could put a neutral attachment in the Sworn Knights, and you would still get rerolls now, as long as your opponent doesn't control bags and crowns.
Fortune Seeker.
Yeah, aren't you so glad? The Brotherhood without banners, what they really needed was more healing, and now that the Fortune Seeker is buffed, so glad he got buffed, so that the Brotherhood without banners knights become even stronger.
Yeah, it did take away Dothraki Outriders though. That they took a hit from that
Brotherhood
change.
Night's Watch, Greyjoys, Balon didn't change. Oh boy, there's a whole list.
The Brotherhood, they're better.
Brotherhood, yeah, there are lots of things.
Well, didn't they remove the Warsworn attachment limit or something too? So can't you just take multiples of those for outflank that also ignore attachment limits? If I'm correct,
they're still capped at 2, I think.
There's ups and downs, there's winners and losers. I think overall,
when faced with this much adversity, I think there's only one thing you can do:
make crazy lists and have a good time.
Tactfully retreat.
Tactfully retreat. It is about that time. Yes. We still haven't seen how it's all going to fall. We can have lots of opinions, but it's going to take many games to really feel the meta again. So we'll probably come back and address some of these factions point by point later on when we feel more confident about it. But for now, you can follow us on YouTube. We also run this as a podcast, so anywhere you like to get your podcasts, you can subscribe to us there and get regular updates. Spotify, Apple, whatever. We got anything else, or is that about it?
I think next episode we'll have a guest speaker to give us some details about U.S. Nationals.
Oh yeah, U.S. Nationals is coming up. So we'll talk about that next time, possibly, depending on guest scheduling, and I guess that's it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the Tactical Approach, and we are now performing a tactical retreat. We will live to fight again another day. Farewell!
Hit the stop button, right?